A Scientologist has been convicted, and Elron Hubbard, your occult roots are showing. Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After Occult. Welcome to everybody who's joining us in the live chat. Hello, and hello to the members. Great to see you there. Big thank you to the moderators helping out today to keep the wheels on the bus. And if you have a question, put question in all caps, and I could see it easier, and we can get to as many as we can. Because as per usual, we have tons of Scientology culty stuff to talk about. Multiple things. And I know the thing you guys are probably all worried about right now, because we talked about it yesterday, and you might be freaked out like I was. The idea that Tom Cruise at 62 was dating a 25-year-old who seemed kind of cool and not somebody who should be being involved with Scientology, which is pretty much anybody. Well, it turns out not happening. Apparently, she came forward and I think made a statement about it. They are not in a romantic relationship. It's probably just Tom Cruise's way of trying to just throw a little bit of a PR curveball and go, look, I can hang out with people that are different. I'm different, just trying to improve on Scientology's image of being completely homophobic, because the young lady here in question was, it says, I think it was on her website, she identifies as bisexual, and many, many reasons why it was perplexing that this would be. It's not. We can all let it go. They're not dating. She is safe. She can mark herself safe from Tom Cruise's romantic overtures. I don't know what you call it. All of us, we are safe. Safe from being romantically involved with Tom Cruise. There should be like those things like on Facebook where it's mark safe, safe. Like if there's a hurricane or something, there should be some warning system like that for specifically female celebrities that Tom Cruise might be afterwards, that they need to mark themselves safe. Safe from Tom Cruise. I'm safe. Okay, let's now go over and talk a little bit about the SP chef. The SP chef, Samuel, was recently in this publication in Germany, and it's a big publication. And Samuel shared this wonderful short of him going in and getting a copy of the magazine. It's just so cute. I loved it because, I love Samuel. And you know what I love the most? When he says, hello, darlings. Oh, I just love it. I want it to be my ringtone. Samuel, we need to figure that out. How can we record it? And I can make that my ringtone. I totally want it. Note to self, get a new ringtone and get Samuel to do hello, darling. And we'll just say it over and over and over again. I like that. So we're going to take a look at this. Let's see. This again is a short he did. I just love it. This is in German, but he does have a video on his channel where he goes through the whole article and he translates it. And then he also has his, adding in his anecdotes about it as well. There it is on the newsstand. Woo! Look at that. I hadn't seen an actual copy of the magazine. That is slick. I love it. So go Samuel, the SP chef. Go check him out and check this out as well. And again, he did do a video where he goes through the magazine and he translates it. So definitely check it out. Check it out when you can. La 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 la. Lori, hey, happy belated. It was your birthday yesterday. That's awesome. I agree, old Fritz. Samuel is a treasure. Yep. Samuel is the cutest. I love it. Steph22 says, hi, Natalie. Your hair looks great. Thank you for that. Hey, awesome mod squad and all the great swells in the chat. Yeah, I washed it yesterday. I'm like still trying to figure it out. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I got a bunch of my hair chopped off. It was like getting it was long. It was getting long again. And needed a change, lightened it up, but I'm glad that you like it. I'm liking it. It's easier to weigh down. When my hair grows out, it gets so weighted. Okay, enough about that. Let's move on to the next thing here, which is Anonymous Lens here on YouTube. Anonymous Lens has been releasing these letters from the Rehabilitation Project Force back when it existed under that name in the Sea Organization, and they're very enlightening. But I just learned that Anonymous Lens is also doing some live streaming in Spanish. And we were just talking about this the other day, how we need more. It'd be great to have more channels that stream in other languages. So take a look at this.
No importa que si estoy hablando solamente a una persona, está bien. Si estoy hablando
And I don't speak Spanish, so I don't understand what this person is saying, but it's probably something good. Check it out. Anonymous Lens here on YouTube, live streaming some Scientology cult information in Spanish, which I think is great. You can find a link down below to that video and all the videos that we're going to be looking at so that you can go back and go, hey, I really enjoyed that segment. I want to do a deeper dive. I want to see the whole video. Or maybe it's a creator here on YouTube who's new to you and you might be like, you know what? I want to follow that person. I'm going to give it a subscribe. So be sure to go check that out. Okay, let's see here. Miss Sunrise Dawn, thank you so much for the super sticker on your birthday because it's my birthday and you're awesome. I appreciate that. And happy birthday to you. I love it. I love celebrating people's birthdays. Okay, now let's talk about a video that Jenna Miscavige did. She's doing these pretty much daily where she's asking questions. So people, this is a wonderful opportunity to head over to Jenna Miscavige here on YouTube and hit her up in the comments with different questions that you have for her. Jenna Miscavige wrote an amazing book about her time growing up in Scientology and the C word called Beyond Belief. And many of you right now might be reading it or listening to it on Audible, like I am right now. I read it years ago when it first came out, but I wanted to kind of refresh. This is a great opportunity to read the book and be able to actually ask her questions in real time. And I know many of us are doing that, myself included. So be aware of that. Let's go take a look at the recent video she did about creativity, healing, and creativity.
So at first it kind of started out not as something that I was doing intentionally. It was almost something I started doing because I needed it. I can't put I wouldn't have been able to put my finger on why.
And Jenna is so creative. If you're not familiar, she had a flower business and she could do these just beautiful arrangements. She does ceramics, just really artistic.
But so it just started out naturally. It wasn't something where I was like, oh, I'm going to do artistic things to heal. It just wound up happening in an organic way. So one of the things that I realized is that if you grow up in a way kind of like I did in Scientology, and I think many young kids do, where you kind of don't have control over your situation. You know, you can't control, for example, who your mom marries, or you can't control your school situation.
And remember, Jenna Miscavige did not see her parents. I mean, she did not live with them for years, did not see them for years. It just, each time I hear her story or similar ones like that, it breaks my heart, but it's important to hear.
I couldn't control where I was going to be located, or I couldn't control anything. Everything was sort of up to everyone else, where I was, what I did.
That is so true. Jenna and I have done a couple videos here on the channel, and she shares a lot about what that was like. I know before I got to know Jenna on a personal level, I wondered myself too, like, did she get special treatment in this organization because she was David Miscavige's niece? And she got special treatment, all right, but not in the way that anybody would want that treatment. She was put through interrogations on the e-meter more than I think it would easily, more than most, even in the C organization, a ridiculous number of hours being interrogated because her last name was Miscavige. So it didn't help her at all. It worked against her. Her story is fascinating. Check it out. If you have not read the book, it's Beyond Belief. You can get it on Amazon and you can find her here on YouTube and get in there and ask those questions because she's answering them every day and it's fabulous. All right, let's jump over to now here on YouTube. The Too Far Pod is what it's called. Did a segment recently, and Scientology came up. And it's so interesting to me because they are located in Los Angeles, it sounds like, and they're talking about, well, if you have people who come to Los Angeles, what do you do? Where do they take them? And they say, you definitely need to take them to go see the Scientology Blue buildings and just really see the cult in person. So once again, Scientology, the whole idea of going to see Scientology, it's not because, oh, I want to go and I want to find out more and maybe better myself and become a Scientologist. No, we want to go. We want to see, we want to like look at the cult. I mean, it's like going in and visiting the zoo. It's like you could see cult members in real time when they come out. That is definitely very much the vibe. And they were talking about that. And also how, hold on here. Actually, let's go to the clip and then we'll talk about it. They're talking about having a friend in Scientology. One of them found out they had a friend in Scientology, which got me thinking, have any of you ever found out that a friend or a coworker was a Scientologist? How did that go? Tell me in the chat. If you're on the replay, jump in those comments or even email me, Natalie@lifeafteroccult.com. I am very curious if it's similar to kind of like what their reaction was.
For somebody I'm friendly with, I would say. Friends more with the boyfriend. One of my most successful friends is an avid Scientologist. I had no idea.
Really?
This is one of my first, like, has this experience, have you had this happen to you, Rock? Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in LA. Like,
it?
Watch Going Clear.
Okay.
It's just
and then you'll never ask that question again.
Creepy.
It's so creepy. It's literally a cult.
It's literally a cult. I love too that they're referencing Going Clear because Going Clear is a book and it's also a documentary that came out and was recently released on Netflix. So if you've not already seen it, it used to be on HBO. It might still be on HBO. Going Clear, Scientology and the Prison of Belief, but you can definitely find it on Netflix and check it out because if you haven't seen it, see it. A lot of people are seeing it. I love that other content creators are seeing it and filling in the blanks on Scientology because there's things that you hear it's a cult, but why? What are the stories behind that? And they're finding out what those are and they're sharing them. So I just love this. I love it so much that they were talking about it. Rocks in a box. I found out a coworker was in Scientology since he was a kid. I had a lot of questions. I'm curious, was that person open to answering any of the questions? I'm curious. Marissa says, never met a Scientologist. I don't think. Yeah, that you know of. It always is interesting to find out that, somebody is a Scientologist, especially depending on how you knew them, right? Did you know them through work? Was it romantically? Because let me tell you, those of you who are out there who are single and ready to mingle, beware, especially in the Los Angeles area. Can you imagine dating someone? Although Scientologists, I mean, they kind of tend to let you know fairly early about it because they want to recruit you. But these days, because there's so much backlash about Scientology and so much truth coming out about Scientology, it has me really curious. Do Scientologists go on these dating apps? That could be a whole video. In fact, note to self. Let's do a video about Scientology dating. Do they use dating apps? What do they say? How do they bring up the topic of Scientologists? Will they only date Scientologists or are they looking to recruit? Because here's the thing. I know so many Scientologists, or I should say knew, who got into Scientology. Well, actually still many of them are ex-Scientologists today through a romantic relationship, through somebody they were dating who said, hey, check this out. And that's how they got into Scientology. Very, very common and disturbing when it happens. And I think it goes to show too, just how, when you're dating and people put their best foot forward, I would assume that with Scientologists, it's the same way. And then if you feel you're into the person, maybe then they bring it up and are like, hey, come do this free personality test. Because that's how I imagine it going in my fan fiction in my head. Because back in my day, when I was a Scientologist and single, it was really the internet was out, but it was nothing like it is. That would have been like 90. It was in the mid 90s, the early to mid 90s. And there weren't like dating apps and stuff like that. But now they're just all over the place. And I'm real curious about how Scientologists navigate that. So little idea. If any of you know somebody who got recruited into Scientology like that, or had an experience with a Scientologist on a dating app, I want to hear from you. Natalie at lifeafteroccult.com. Go ahead and email me. I'd love to connect. We can share your story. It can be anonymous if you'd like to remain anonymous that way. But I am curious, did you have an experience with a Scientologist on a dating app? Let this girl know. Let's talk about it. I'm curious. I have so many questions. So many questions. TN Jenny says, the closest I ever got to Scientology was an ex who mentioned the book Dianetics. He didn't push it and I never read it. Yeah. Ooh, still close call, kind of, huh? Yeah. Let's see. I got, Lori says, I had a friend who dated a Scientologist and he joined in Los Angeles. Then he made a joke about Elron and got called into ethics. They broke up. He ran from Scientology. So the Scientologist made a joke about Elron Hubbard, and then the Scientologist got called into ethics. That's hilarious. They would, but I wonder how Scientology found out. It may have come up in an interrogation, or maybe a mutual friend reported that person, because that will happen, has happened, does happen. You're hanging out with your friends, maybe one or two in the group are Scientologists, you're having fun. Someone makes a joke about Scientology and you laugh at it and hoping your Scientology friend doesn't notice, but they do, and they write a report on you to Scientology. Then you have to do interrogations. Amy says the public will always push it on a spouse they can't help themselves. That's true. That is really true. Ooh, John says someone should make a fake profile on a dating site saying they're looking for a Scientology partner and see how many responses they get. Yeah, let me know if you do that. I don't know. That would be interesting. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Let's move on. Let's go look at Audit LA. Audit LA, you can find her here on YouTube, was out in Pasadena because yesterday was National Night Out. So you know that is prime time for Scientology to get out there with their front groups. Because if there's a National Night Out, Scientology pretty much calls it National Let's Get Our Tents and Our Front Groups out there. Because if nothing, we know that Scientology loves a tent. They love to put up a tent. You got the volunteer minister tents that are yellow. You have the truth about drugs tents, which are kind of a blue. I'm not sure what you call that color. We're about to look at it. So you tell me. Let's see here. This is from Audit LA. And she was out at the National Night Out in Pasadena. And lo and behold, the Foundation for a Drug-Free World was there. Total Scientology front group. Total Scientology front group. Let's take a look.
People in their uniforms to try to recruit. So I'm hoping I'll be able to stop that. I'm not going to interfere with, like, if they're a vendor or whatever, because I don't know what the legalities are about that. I got to tread lightly on Pasadena. I hear they're pretty nasty, but you better believe I'll call out anything. I'm waiting for people in their uniforms to try to recruit.
So she was keeping an eye on it. Go watch her video because she was out there for a while and she covered some interesting things and had some interesting input as well about the whole Scientology police relationship. You know, you got the LAPD and this was out in Pasadena. So again, Audit LA, link down below. You'll be able to go see the whole video. Ooh, and Lori Abbs, who was telling us her story, says Victor made the joke. She was the Scientologist. She reported him. That's why he broke up and ran from it. Oh, gosh. So she reported someone that she was dating that made a joke about it. Wow. That's just Scientology crazy for you there. And yeah, I think you're right. That is kind of a teal color. I think you're right. I'm like blue. Couldn't remember the name. You are correct. I think it's teal. Okay, let's go over to Phil Jones now. If you don't know Phil Jones, you want to know Phil Jones. He is here on YouTube. He and his wife, Willie Jones, protest Scientology. They have been vocal about it for years because their adult children have practiced disconnection, Scientology's harmful practice of disconnection, because they are in the Sea organization. And I love that Phil is here doing his thing on YouTube. Let's take a look at a video, a little clip short that he put out.
You ever notice how many mistakes Scientology makes when they try to handle things like protesters or attacks or criticisms?
He's so right about this. This is something we say all the time over here about how Scientology shoots themselves in the foot more than would be statistically probable. It's almost the majority of the time.
Make their own enemies all the time. You just look at some of the people out there that are criticizing Scientology. Scientology created most of those just by poor handling. And yet, in Scientology, Hubbard said that if you're clear, you don't make mistakes. In Dianetics, he said, quote, the sentient portion of the mind which computes the answers to problems and which makes man man is utterly incapable of error, unquote.
Well, I think a few of us can say something on that, including Phil, right? It is something that Scientology says. And it's so ridiculous because I'm clear. I did through operating Thetan level 4, and I make all kinds of mistakes. I do. So I don't know. Maybe I should ask for my money back. What happened? What's up with that, Scientology?
Quote, that's Elron Hubbard in Dianetics. And a clear supposedly has no reactive mind, so no non-sentient portion of their mind, and yet they make lots of mistakes. So maybe Scientology and Dianetics maybe doesn't work.
That is such a great video. It's perfect too for people who are still in Scientology or have doubts about Scientology because it is a valid point. The claims that Elron Hubbard makes about the state of clear, which you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get to in most cases, and that doesn't even count donations. And you achieve this state where you realize Scientology's confidential realization that you have when you go clear. Many of you know it by heart now. It's, oh, wait, I've been mocking up my own reactive mind. I'm not going to do it anymore. I mean, that's literally it. You spend all that money to realize you've been creating the reactive mind that Elron Hubbard told you you have. You see that? You show up, hey, you have a reactive mind. Your reactive mind is doing all this. You need to pay all this money to Scientology. Well, a little bit later in this video, we are about to get into Elron Hubbard's, his roots in the occult. And it really ties this together, how Scientology is a scam and it actually doesn't work. This is not the first time that Elron Hubbard tried, some crazy scheme, but it was the one that stuck, I guess you could say. But Phil is completely right about that. If you're not achieving this state and having all these wins to the level that Elron Hubbard said you're supposed to in Scientology, maybe it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know anybody who achieved the state of clear that fit all of those points that Elron Hubbard said. Of course, if you bring that up, because this girl brought it up, you're told, well, there's more to do. Elron Hubbard found in his research that there's more beyond the state of clear. Yeah, he found out and said that there are body thetans, right, that you have to get rid of. So that's their answer for that. When you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm clear and I'm still making mistakes. In fact, true story, after I attested to the state of clear, because that's what you do in Scientology, you attest to the state, you have reached the state of clear. I did some of the stupidest things I've ever done in my life. I'm really not sure it helped. It actually might have made things worse on multiple levels. And I will tell you this, in Scientology, growing up in Scientology, I had things that I wanted to handle, things that I wanted to achieve, ways that I wanted to be. I had goals for myself and I achieved them when I left Scientology. That is really kind of the crazy part of it. When I left Scientology, that's when I finally started experiencing life the ways that was promised to us in Scientology. So ironic, I'm telling you. Yeah, that's right, Mike. It's like those infomercials. But wait, there's more. There's more. And then when you get up to the operating Thetan levels, which a lot of people at those levels, because you tend to be older, mainly because you're at a place in life where you have more disposable income and you can spend it on Scientology. Well, what else happens as you age? like myself, I'm 50, at 53, I'm about to turn 54, is, you know, the knees start hurting, the back starts hurting, just different things like that. Well, then they tell you, oh, you need to do operating Thetan level 5 to address your physical body issues. Now, that doesn't address it either, because then you're told, oh, you know what? There's more. You need to address more body thetans, but this time you're going to address ones that are 1,000 miles away and maybe even on the moon. I'm not even joking. That's what happens as you move up the bridge to total freedom. That is what happens. It's so stupid. Okay, now let's go over to, speaking of scandals, y'all might remember, and some of you might not know this if you're new to the whole anti-Scientology, exposing Scientology movement. There was a Scientologist named Reed Slatkin, and he was convicted and went to prison for fraud for a Ponzi scheme, a big Ponzi scheme, okay? And I'm only bringing this up because we're going to talk about the recent conviction of a Scientologist, because I think it really shows the propensity of some Scientologists to want this get rich quick kind of a scheme, because you need to pay for Scientology. There's so much financial demands on Scientologists that they tend to kind of like, go for these get rich quick MLM type things, or in this case, outright Ponzi schemes. Now, some of them probably didn't realize that they were in a Ponzi scheme, but the Scientologists running it, they knew. This guy sure knew. So first, let's just take a look at a clip about this Scientologist, Reed Slatkin, who, here's the interesting thing about this. Okay, after he gets busted, right, then you have to get the money back. There's like a clawback of these funds. Well, he gave a ton of money to Scientology. What did Scientology do? Well, they spent years ignoring reports that Scientologists made on this guy for doing what he was doing. They ignored it. As long as that cash cow was bearing fruit and bringing in that money, they let it happen. Till the guy gets busted and convicted and goes to prison. Then Scientology still tried to fight giving back the money, and they settled on, I think it was like $3 million. I think it's in this video. Let's take a look.
For a scheme. He told the court that he was afraid to shut the operation down because of the reaction he would have gotten from the church. With so many of the former pastor's friends in Scientology involved, it's easy to see why he would be worried. In 2003, Reed Slatkin pled guilty to wire fraud, mail fraud, obstruction of justice, and money laundering. The judge
Yes, he was a minister in Scientology, a Scientology minister. I bet you don't claim him anymore, Scientology. A Scientology minister.
judge sentenced him to 14 years in prison for his crimes and ordered him to pay back $240 million in restitution. This sentence also meant that anyone who profited from his scheme had to pay back what they gained. For example, Greta Van Susteren and her husband,
and Greta, by the way, is a Scientologist,
agreed to pay back $700,000 worth of profits made from Slatkin's scheme. In total, they had netted $939,000. The church publicly condemned Slatkin for his actions. They stated that he violated their code of ethics, and
keep in mind, they only condemned him after he was convicted. And you might think, well, Natalie, I mean, surely you shouldn't really condemn somebody until they're convicted. They ignored years of reports on this guy from other Scientologists. It's not like they didn't know, but he gave a lot of money to Scientology. It gives Grant Cardone, because Grant Cardone is another one that gets away with certain things in Scientology. Why? Because he gives all that money to Scientology. So Scientology has a track record of looking the other way. As long as you're greasing that palm, as long as you're giving them that money, they're going to look the other way until something like this happens. And it's the actual court system making them pay back the money. And then they have no choice but to then declare the man a suppressive person, right?
church cut all ties with him, expelling Slatkin from the organization. For years, reports from other Scientologists on Slatkin's character were ignored. The church fought with everything it had to avoid giving back the money they got from Slatkin and eventually settled on $3 million.
Yeah, $3 million.
Slatkin served 10 years before being released from prison. Church of Scientology.
So, again, they knew This is often the case with Scientology. There are these internal reports. This is when maybe the snitch culture and reporting in Scientology could actually help Scientology or Scientologists when they're reporting actual crimes. How many stories, I bet many of you in the chat can just name them off, have we found out from the Danny Masterson case to other ones where Scientologists were breaking the law and other Scientologists made it known. Hey, we're not allowed to go to the police. We're not allowed to go report this guy. So I'm letting you know, Scientology. In fact, let's wake up. Oh, that. Okay, let's fix David Miscavige here. Let's fix that. He would like that. Office of Special Affairs. This story is rearing its ugly head, and more will come because of their latest Scientologist who has been convicted that we are just about to talk about. But here's the thing. Here's my major beef with this. You knew. You covered it up like many of the crimes that happen in Scientology, and now it's out. It's not enough to wait until the courts force you to do the right thing, Which kind of reminds me, isn't Danny Masterson still in good standing with Scientology? Was he declared a suppressive person? I've heard he was. I've heard he wasn't. It's all ridiculous. But Office of Special Affairs, get it together. Because all of the truth is coming out now. It's all coming out. All coming out. Okay, so let's see. Now let's get to the guy who recently was convicted. Jeffrey Augustine has been covering this story for quite some time. We're going to take a look at a clip from a video that he did on it just the other day, giving the whole story. So when you get a chance, go watch the whole video to fill in all of the blanks. But we're just going to look at a little bit of this.
Let's summarize. Scientologist David Gentili and his non-Scientologist co-defendant Jeffrey Schneider were convicted last week in federal court, Eastern District of New York. And I got to tell you, Artie McConnell and his team did a great job. It was, of course, led by U.S. Attorney Breon Peace, and they just crushed it. There was so much evidence, it was amazing performance. It's the way the law is supposed to work. And as a consequence, David Gentili and Jeffrey Schneider are now facing up to 20 years.
20 years. And this is another situation where this went on for a long time with this guy as a Scientologist. He used his Scientology connections to defraud. For this, they're calling it a Ponzi-like scheme, but just crazy.
In federal prison, 240 months. Now, there's some fallout from this. And hello, Janelle H. How are you? I was on the phone, like journalists from all over were calling me. And so there's going to be fallout. Because once you're convicted, unlike the Masterson case where he's handcuffed and taken to prison, in a white-collar crime, it's a little bit different. Gentili is still out on bail. He's convicted. Sentencing is October 28, I believe. And hello, Albert 420 Wax.
Looking forward to his sentencing. Boy, what is with me talking today? Link down below to the whole video. Make sure you check it out. And everybody who's here, little reminder, please go show that like button some aloha. It really likes it. And I do too. Mahalo for that. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well and set your notification bell to all so you get notifications when I go live. All right. So that guy is just a piece of crap. I mean, this is it. The money, there's so much more to this story. We're doing a recap, so I'm not getting into all of it. There is so much there. And this is another example of Scientology knew. This did not catch them off guard. There were reports. It's like Reed Slatkin all over again. Like they never learned. They don't learn. It's all about keeping the money going. And it's such a scam. And the stuff we're about to get into having to do with Elron Hubbard and the occult is going to really kind of, I think, you can see how the groundwork was laid by Elron Hubbard before he even wrote and published Dianetics in terms of being a scammer. So, but before we get to that, let's take a look at this clip from Dan Walks LA. It's actually related because Dan went to the library and got a copy of the book Barefaced Messiah. And we are going to then look at a couple clips from a podcast that covered it. And it's the details of Elron Hubbard during his occult days. He was into all this like sex magic, this Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, this whole thing. It is a whole thing. But first, let's take a look at this. In fact, I reached out to Dan and I said, hey, if you're reading the book, I want to read the book or listen to it on Audible, because it's been a long time. And let's talk about it. So hopefully I will hear back from Dan soon.
No, where is he? There he is.
So I love that he went and got the book from a library and then he's right there outside of Scientology.
That's right. Oh, let's show Osa. Osa loves to follow me with this camera. So let's just make sure that they...
And you can find Dan. This is Dan Walks LA. That's the name of his channel here on YouTube.
They see this.
So somewhere good.
Wow, they're not on it today. They're really not on it today. Someone's slacking up there.
Yep, they are. But I love that he did that and has to let the Office of Special Affairs know, because sometimes I just want to make their job a little bit easier, because they are probably, on rice and beans, living that bunk bed life and have one foot out the door themselves. Because let me tell you, I can tell you from experience, you don't hear the truth about Elron Hubbard and Scientology and have it not stick to some degree. As much as Scientology comes in, it's like, no, that's not true. Here's what the truth is. You still hear it. That's what happened to me towards the end in Scientology. I was doing some public relations work for Scientology, and I was starting to hear what people really thought about Scientology. And it really helped me open my eyes about it. It did. It really did. That on top of the whole, everything that was going on with people, Marty Rathbun at the time had left Scientology and was being a whistleblower at the time. And Mike Rinder had left, and Jeff Hawkins, and then Mark Headley, books coming out, so many things all helped me and my family leave Scientology, because those stories were being shared. And that is the importance of sharing those stories and continuing to do so with current ones and ones from the past, because it really gives the backstory for people of why Scientology is a human trafficking cult. All right, let's see now. Let's get over, let's see. Esperanza, were you from SP Crusader? You got to tell me what that means, Esperanza. Do you mean like one of the crusades, one of the protesting crusades? Ask me that in another way and I might be able to get what you're saying there. Where you from, SP? Okay, you got to tell me more, Esperanza. I'm so sorry. Maybe shoot me an email too, and then you can kind of explain and I can answer that question for you. Natalie at lifeafteroccult.com. Yep, Abraham, not that bunk bed life. No, they are all about that bunk bed life. All about that bunk bed life there in the Sea Org. 3, 4 high even sometimes with those bunk beds. Yep. Abraham says, did the upper bunks at least have rails in case one rolled over and fell? No, not that I'm aware of. I never saw rails. And I thought the same thing. I was terrified of falling out, because my very first time in one of those dorms, I was in the 3rd bunk and I was terrified of falling out. It was like a legit thing, but I guess you just figure it out. You figure it out. Okay, now speaking of Elron Hubbard and the occult, like we were saying, let's get into this, because hold on to your seats, people, because it is about to get really weird. Really weird. So this is from a podcast, Behind the Bastards, how Elron Hubbard made an antichrist using sex magic. Okay, this gets into basically information that's in the book Barefaced Messiah, the same book that Dan Walks LA had and was showing to Osa that I want to reread myself and talk about. So I thought this was super interesting, especially given the recent conviction of a Scientologist and the previous ones with fraud and stealing and all of that. Hey, Liz Gale, this is my favorite topic. We were raised as witches, I swear. We were taught we could affect others with just our mind and by doing processing. I'm all about embracing the witch in me. I never thought about it like that, Liz Gale. Except I think some might argue too, depends on how you view witchcraft today, or if it's like Wiccan versus like the occult. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm with you. I think it's fascinating. And that's right. We should just embrace our inner witch, but use her for good, which is not what Elron Hubbard did. I know that might shock and surprise many of you, but listen to this.
Neeson was instantly skeptical of his roommate.
So just to set the scene here, he's talking about when Elron Hubbard moved in with Jack Parsons. They were living in this like larger home / mansion, and he had a roommate because he wasn't trying to, spend that money. He probably did not have a bunk bed though. And this is the roommate was sharing this information.
Telling an interviewer later, "I can't stand phonies, and to me, he was so obviously a phony, a real con man. But he was certainly not a dummy. He was very sharp and quick, a fascinating storyteller, and he could charm the shit out of anybody. He talked interminably about his war experiences and seemed to have been everywhere. Once he said he was on Admiral Halsey's staff. I called a friend who had worked with Halsey, and my friend said, 'Shit, I've never heard of him.'"
This is the interesting thing. Back then, even though there wasn't the internet, journalists and this person, the roommate, is it any wonder that Elron Hubbard doesn't like journalists? It's on the list of things when you were getting into Scientology. Do you work for the CIA, the FBI? Does any of your family work for the CIA or FBI? Are you or your family involved in journalism or working for any type of media? That's all part of it. And it kind of makes sense when you understand what happened to Elron Hubbard throughout his life. And it really paints a picture of, oh, this guy is butthurt about the media and journalists going back to this time when his roommate was somebody who reported the media and he fact checked him. Today we have Google and the internet, and it's so much easier to fact check somebody or get more information or even reach people. Back then, that was just harder to do, which is why I think it made it easier for Elron Hubbard to grow his scam with Scientology, right? To even, well, I'm not going to spoil alert here. We'll let them tell the story here.
I was not one of his favoritist people because I like to try and trip him up. One time he told a story about how he was walking down a corridor in the British Museum when he was suddenly grabbed by 3 scientists who dragged him into an office and began measuring his skull because it was such a perfect shape. I said, "Gee, Ron, that's a great story. Didn't I read it in George Bernard Shaw?" Another time, he said he was in the Aleutians in command of a destroyer, and a polar bear jumped from an ice floe onto his ship and chased everyone around. I realized it as an old folklore story that goes way back. He was always broke and trying to borrow money. That was another reason he didn't like me. I would never lend him a cent.
Yep, would not lend him a cent, and for good reason. So while they're there doing this whole trying to create this antichrist with all this sex magic, and this is before, this is like in the 40s, okay? He published Dianetics in 1950 and then started Scientology not that long afterwards. So this is leading up to Dianetics and this whole narrative that Elron Hubbard was a war hero and a family man and all the things that the Scientology narrative follows. And now we're like, ooh, no, that's actually not true. So give this a listen. So here is where, you got Elron Hubbard living in Jack Parsons' house. I'm sure he was maybe paying some kind of a rent. Maybe that's why he was sharing a room. And then Jack Parsons at the time was in a relationship. Guess who broke up that relationship? Yep, Elron Hubbard. Check it out.
I should note that everyone who knew Betty and Jack at the time emphasized later how deeply in love the couple appeared to be. And for several months, this seemed like it was something that was actually going to last. Elron Hubbard would finally, break up this relationship. See, being gullible and sort of dumb for a trailblazing rocket scientist, Jack Parsons had immediately been taken in by LRH's charm.
He was very charming, and I've heard this with other reports of people that knew him both in and outside of Scientology. All say that he was charming and charismatic, which I'm pretty sure those are 2 of the characteristics that if you're going to be a cult leader, you definitely need to have in your back pocket, because I think it helps to recruit people.
He'd written Aleister Crowley, his master, at the start of 1946. He, Hubbard, is a gentleman, red hair, green eyes, honest and intelligent, and we have become great friends. Although he has no formal training in magic, he has an extraordinary amount of experience and understanding in the field. Ron appears to have some sort of highly developed astral vision. He describes his angel as a beautiful winged woman with red hair, whom he calls the Empress and who has guided him through his life and saved him many times.
The Empress. This was news to me. I had forgotten about this little tidbit that he had this spirit guide, with red hair, the Empress, who guided him. Interestingly, in Scientology, I didn't hear about any of this. I didn't hear about this Empress now, did I read and listen to everything by Elron Hubbard? No, but I feel like people would have been talking about it or been like, oh, hey, but here's how Scientologists talk about it because they can't talk crap about something Elron Hubbard says. So if they listen to something and it sounds weird, it goes like this. Hey, did you hear? I was listening to the most fascinating tape lecture by Elron Hubbard, and he was talking about spirit guides. It was fascinating. And they're filling you out to see if you listen to it and what you thought about it, but no one's going to say anything bad about it. Oh, it was during his research years because people, as a Scientologist, there would be little things that would kind of come up about Elron Hubbard and his time in the occult. Well, Scientology has a whole narrative for how they covered up this part of his life, and we are going to get to that.
He's in complete accord with our own principles. I have found a staunch companion and comrade in Ron.
So this is Jack Parsons telling Aleister Crowley, his master, hey, I found this dude. He's going to be great with us. And he's got red hair and green eyes. And this spirit guide, who's also a redhead, what is up with that? Liz Gale, I'd love your take on that because they also reference this belief that all redheads are derived from the same, that you're all related. Does that mean, Liz Gale, you're related to Elron Hubbard? I don't know that that's actually factual. I thought it was interesting and they bring it up in the podcast. But Liz, you got to tell me your thoughts on that. Okay, so now Elron Hubbard, he's living in the guy's house. He breaks up the relationship with Jack Parsons and his girl. And what does he do? He runs off with her. And he doesn't just run off with her, okay? He runs off with her and steals Jack Parsons' money.
And he suspected that Hubbard was playing along with this whole caper, both for the sex, which he got in plentiful quantity, and because doing these rituals would help him build up trust with Jack Parsons, so he could then rob the high priest blind. And this is exactly what happened. In May of 1946, LRH and Betty Northrup fled California with something like $10,000 to $20,000 of Jack Parsons' money.
Remember, 1946 is only 4 years before the release of Dianetics and Elron Hubbard and this whole family man and war hero and all that, whereas 4 years earlier, this guy is doing sex magic rituals and running off with Jack Parsons' girl after having stole his money.
Ostensibly to buy a yacht to resell on the West Coast, but instead they stayed on the Eastern Seaboard, living off Jack's savings, just stole all of his savings.
Wow.
So,
man,
after this happened,
you got conned.
You did absolutely get conned.
And he didn't even get the homunculus.
No, didn't even get the Moonchild.
No, didn't get the Moonchild. So then you're wondering, like, okay, being this is so close to when Dianetics came out, and then he creates Scientology, how does Scientology spin this one, right? Especially today, where there's the internet. Now they can't spin it. They still do. They have their own narrative, and we are going to go over that. So take a look at this. This kind of gets into how Scientology lies to cover up Elron Hubbard's black magic practice that he had going.
His newfound Church of Scientology began to spin the story of LRH's days as an occult sex scribe to claim that he'd really been a secret government agent tasked with destroying the U.S. black magic scene. They issued this statement. Hubbard broke up black magic in America. Because he was well known as a writer and philosopher and had friends among the physicists, he was sent in to handle the situation of black magic being practiced in a house in Pasadena occupied by nuclear physicists. Wow. He went to live at the house and investigated the black magic rites and the general situation and found them very bad. Hubbard's mission was successful, far beyond anyone's expectations. The house.
So Scientology's narrative, if you're tracking here, is that Elron Hubbard broke up the sex cult. No. He was undercover. I got to remember that the next time I get in trouble. I don't know what I would get in trouble for. Where would I be? I don't know. Be somewhere. I don't even know where. I am so boring. I can't even think of a thing. Anyways, if I get busted, I'm just going to be like, oh no, I was there investigating it. I was investigating it. I was there to break it up. No, what are you talking about? Pull an Elron Hubbard there in that way. See how that works.
House was torn down. Hubbard rescued a girl they were using. The black magic
Rescued a girl they were using. So Scientology's narrative, again, Elron Hubbard stole the girlfriend of Jack Parsons and a bunch of his money and ran off. And Scientology's spin on that is that he was there to break up this occult sex cult and save this girl. Really? There's so much more about his relationship with this girl that we're not going to get into today, but we will. That just flies in the face of that.
group was dispersed and never recovered. He rescued a girl.
Yeah, he rescued a girl. It's too much. It's too much. It's so stupid. Let's see. Bill Ellis, do Scientologists believe in premarital sex? Yep. Scientologists can have premarital sex, but not in the C organization. That's where it is a very heavy line, which will get you sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force. Although, I don't know. If we use some of Elron Hubbard's technology here, maybe you could have sex in the Sea Org and say you were just investigating. You were investigating to find out why people so want to have sex. And you were trying to shut it down. Esperanza, Phil Jones' channel is called, I believe it's Philip Jones. So if you look up Philip Jones or Philip Jones Scientology, you should be able to go ahead and find that. Let's see. TN Treasure Finder. So this was in Pasadena where Audit LA was. Bike Man went up, and that's the guy who rides the bike who's often with Audit LA. Bike Man went up and asked the Scientologists if one of them could print Xenu is my homeboy merch. He was supposed to go to the booth next to them. So sounds like there was a booth that did print stuff like that. That's hilarious. Liz Gale. Liz is saying Sarah Northrup, the woman involved, was a huge part of writing Dianetics, but Cult of Scientology has completely erased her from history like many contributors. Yes, that is so true. That is so true. And they had a child, and there was this whole drama. Right, Liz? Wasn't that the one he had the child with? And then it was a whole thing where he kidnapped her and threatened to harm her and all that. This story, there's so much more to it. We're just going to look at this little part right now, having to do with the sex, magic, and occult. And I love that people are talking about this again, because as an ex-Scientologist, I'll admit I'm butthurt about this. The stuff I got in trouble for in Scientology was so stupid, because their idea of ethics and morality, right, is I don't know who they think that applies to. They're still really stuck in the 1950s in many ways, and they can't change a lot of that moral code that they follow, because Elron Hubbard said, and he didn't come back and say, hey, turns out it's okay to be gay. He didn't do any of that. So they still have to follow what Elron Hubbard says. And when you find out about things like this, that Elron Hubbard was involved in the sex cult prior, leading up very close to, within 4 years of releasing Dianetics and then creating Scientology. And he's doing all that stuff, but that's okay. We're just going to cover that up. We're not going to bring that up. And people knew too in Scientology, very, very few. But at the top, and you learn about this too when you read other books and hear other stories as well. Let's see here. Oh, Fluffer Squirrel, good to know. Scientologeek did a fascinating stream on Sarah Northrup. Good to know. I will check that out. Scientologeek you can find here on YouTube. And that person does some really good content uncovering different topics and these scandals in Scientology. There is no shortage. Abraham says we covered it in episode 1 of Sins of Scientology. So that's another place that you can go. And I remember that. It was the first episode they did for Sins of Scientology, and got into this whole thing with Elron Hubbard and the occult and Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and all of it. We will be talking more about this. We will for sure. Let's see. Mena says 5 over an hour-long episodes on Behind the Bastards. Fascinating stuff. Truly. Link down below because you're going to want to check it out. Let's see. I want to make sure I grabbed you guys' questions. We did that one. All right. So if you could, we're going to wrap up here. Before you go, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Thank you, everybody, for being here. If you see something, say something. You can email me, Natalie@lifeafteroccult.com. In the meantime, I hope everybody gets out there and has an amazing cult-free day.